I saw my first pinhole camera in Chicago, and then a couple months later I moved to Phoenix, and I had this really vivid dream about the camera, so the next day I ordered one, and I've been shooting with it ever since. I shoot with this pinhole camera, well not this one, but one like it, and it was handmade in Hong Kong by Jennifer Au. Its medium format takes 120 film and produces square images. It's a lensless, light, tight box, and there's a hole in front of the pinhole. And lensless just means that the light goes directly into the pinhole and onto the film. And the teak wood dries up in Arizona, so I often have to tape it shut to prevent light leaks. Pinhole cameras are a type of camera obscura. Camera obscura is the first kind of camera ever invented. It just means dark room. And before it was a camera used for film, it was a tool to help artists learn to paint and draw with more detail. It was a tool to help people tell time. And it was a tool used by scientists to observe solar eclipses. The first pinhole photograph was taken in the 1850s, and by the 1890s, it was pretty popular. They had commercial pinhole cameras in Japan, England, and in the United States. And in England, they sold 4,000 of them in their first year. They were disposable, and they were called photo minibuses, and unfortunately, none of them were preserved. Pinhole portraits are one of my specialties. I love how the pinhole camera captures the energy of my subjects. The energy of their soul dances onto my film with sunbursts and subtle motions. I think pinhole is romantic and surreal and whimsical. It's also really nice to be able to do pinhole photography because I have to take my time with my images. In a world that revolves around computers and instant gratification, pinhole is kind of a treat because you don't see what you shot for about 2 weeks. It took me about 3 years and many rolls of film to kind of understand my camera. I practiced a lot and took notes with all of the exposures that I did. You don't look into the camera, so you don't really know what you're shooting. So when I first started, I cut off a lot of heads. Now I can look at a scene and I kind of know where to put the camera. And I usually carry a mini tripod and a regular size tripod, and sometimes I handhold for a little extra blur. I used to use my head as a tripod, but I would get hair in the way, so I kind of stopped doing that. When I'm with my subjects, I have them do a variety of poses. Sometimes I ask them to hold really still, and sometimes I ask them to dance or to move slowly across the frame. Each pinhole photograph has a little blur because of the long exposure. And you just kind of learn the exposures by trial and error. And light in Arizona is a lot brighter than light in New York City, so when you're traveling, you do have to adjust your time compensation. So during the daytime, exposures are about 2 to 4 seconds, and in the late afternoon and on cloudy days, it's about 6 to 12 seconds, and evening and indoor shots are about 20 minutes to 8 hours. I have done shots that are 8 hours long. And I don't really keep track of my times anymore, I just kind of know when to close the camera. There's a few things I love about pinhole photography. I love the way the camera feels in my hands. I always feel really creative and artsy when I'm shooting with it. I don't have that same feeling when I'm shooting digital. I love how the sunlight becomes dissected, and when you shoot into it, it produces a gorgeous sunburst, a prism of rainbows that bounce around my subjects. And I also love how the background looks painterly. The scene is softened, and the moment is turned into a wonderful dreamscape. I photograph many kinds of people. I love photographing pregnant women. They seem to glow a little bit more when I'm shooting them in pinhole. I also photograph a lot of weddings in pinhole. No, I'm the only person in Phoenix does that, and perhaps in the world, I'm not sure. I think it makes their days just a little bit more magical. And my clients are usually just curious people that are looking for something non-traditional. They kind of appreciate the technique and the art form. And one of my favorite ways to use my pinhole camera is self-portraiture. I've documented my life with self-portraits on planes and on beaches and sleeping and through all my travels, so I kind of like doing that. I exhibit pretty often. I have a show in the UK right now, and I had a show in Paris in March, and I show pretty frequently in Phoenix. I just had a show that came down and one that opens in October, so if you get some information. And you can keep up with my latest work on Flickr or my website. I try to post a couple times a week, but since I don't get my pictures daily, and having your pinhole portrait taken by me is a photographic experience. It's a fanciful interpretation of your life. And